Welcome back, blue collar woodworkers. I'm Mustache Mike, and this is my corner of the workshop. This week on the corner, we're going to feature scroll saw blades. How are they made? What are the different types? What do all those numbers mean? It's a huge subject. And of course, we're going to have an around the corner tip of the week. And I also feel maybe a bit of a flashback coming around. So grab yourself a board, put it across a couple sawhorses, and sit down. Scroll saw blades. There is so much information and so many different opinions out there about scroll saw blades and which one you should use. And considering all of it, I'm going to tell you, it'll turn your brain into hamster bedding. So, we're going to apply the blue collar approach because I don't want you to split the old pine knot. How are scroll saw blades made? Well, I'm sure every company out there has its own top secret method. But for the most part, they all start out with a big old roll of wire. That wire is run through a die that flattens it to the desired width and the thickness for whatever given blade run that they're currently running. The tooth pattern is now cut into 5-inch intervals. Some manufacturers, why, they die stamp the teeth, some mill, some grind, some precision grind. But no matter what the method is, all of them for the most part leave some material flow. Now we've mentioned the term material flow or material drift. Basically what that means is no matter what the manufacturing process, there's a little bit of material left, usually on one side of the blade. Usually it's the right side as the teeth face you. And what this causes, that little burr on there, is it causes some friction in the cutting material and will cause us to not cut in a straight line. Notice how this takes place as I start to cut down this straight line. You're going to notice that I'll have to start to shift the piece to keep it straight. And that's basically because of that burr. Now, the blade roll is now heat treated by either flame or induction method, and then it's passed through some sort of cooling liquid, usually oil, and that sets the temper. If it's going to be a pin or spiral type blade, then that pin or blade twist is put in at some point in the process. Finally, the blades are cut into 5-inch lengths, which is, of course, the industry standard. Now, back in the old-timey days, as Stumpy would say, this process might have been accomplished with a forge and a hammer. But let me tell you, in these new-timey days, there's some fancy pewter controlling everything. What are the scroll saw blade types? Holy pegboard, let me tell you, it's even bigger subject. And there is a shopload of different blades out there. Now, rather than just freak out at this point, let's cover the basic tool blade designs briefly. So don't run out and get another cold one yet. All the cuts for this little project were made on a 20-year-old scroll saw with pin end blades. I was going to just show these. This is a scroll saw blade. Yes, it is in my fingers, even though you might not be able to see it. So Chip, our program director, who watches everything that we do, said, ain't nobody gonna be able to see that. So we came up with this awesome display. Of course, they aren't really blades, but they're made out of wood, and they represent the types. So to begin with, like any saw, each blade has a kerf, or the notch that it cuts in the wood. One thing different about scroll saw blades is compared to maybe circular saws or band saws, generally for the most part there is no set in the teeth. So the kerf width will be exactly what the blade width is. Of course, we have the pin end that we've talked about here. It comes in a number of different widths, in usually a plain tooth design, and some different widths as well. One thing about the pin end blades, and that's what everybody always says, is because of the pin, you can't do through the hole work or pierce work, as in fret work, where you could enter a hole like this with a pinless type blade. Unfortunately, because of the pin end, you can't get it in the hole. The first blade we'll talk about after that is a standard tooth blade. Now, these are the most simple of scroll saw designs today. All of the teeth are the same size. They're placed directly next to one another on the blade stock. Then the next one we'll talk about is the skip tooth blade. Similar to the standard blade, but a lot like Joy, they're missing every other tooth. The wider gullet here, that allows for less dust buildup in the kerf, and the blade tends to run much cooler. So that's why they're a good choice for new scroll saws. And then we have the double tooth blade. These blades, they cut slower, but they leave a smoother cut. So they're excellent for thicker exposed surfaces, be a whole lot less sanding. One of the most popular blades today is the reverse tooth blade. These blades have the last few teeth facing the opposite direction of the preceding teeth. So the blade cuts both ways and it reduces tear out on materials. And then we have the full reverse blade. These have every third tooth in the opposite direction, much like the reverse tooth blades, but they cut faster, especially in thicker materials. This is kind of an interesting one. It is the crown tooth. Now, sort of like the reverse tooth, it'll cut directions, both directions, but it's better suited for man-made materials like plastic and corian. Then, of course, we have the spiral blade. Very popular. Now, a lot of old timers, they don't even want to mess with them. Why? You want my opinion? Just not enough practice. See, these are made by taking a regular tooth blade and twisting. See, they have the ability to cut in any direction. And sometimes individuals think there's a lack of stability. Get some of these, try them, practice, cut. You'll love them. All these different things up here, including this little Lincoln that I did for demonstration purpose. These were done with spiral tooth blades. They're a good choice. Now, what about all those numbers associated with scroll saw blades? 2/0s, 3s, 5s, 9s, TPIs, DIAs. And the frustrating thing is every manufacturer seems to class their blade different ways. Basically, 2/0 is 2/0, 3, 5, and 9. They're just basic number designations that are done for blade size. 3/0's usually the smallest kerf width, and a 12 is usually the widest. And no, TPIs, that's something on a roll out there in the outhouse here at the Stumpy Nubs workshop. In fact, it's BYO out there. It really means tooth per inch. And generally, the more teeth per inch are used on thinner or harder wood, and the lower number teeth per inch usually on softer or thicker wood. And as far as the blade thickness, it always seems to be in thousandths of an inch. Generally, the thinner the blade, the more fragile it is, but the smaller and tighter cuts it can make. Now, versus the thicker blades, which can stand more blade tension and cutting pressure. Cut a lot thicker, harder wood. Are you confused yet? Just buy a small variety and get to cutting. Or again, visit the manufacturer site, look up them old blade charts, and really plug that old knot hole. So which blade is best? I don't know. I really don't know. It depends on you. What you like, what and how you're cutting. So try several and see what works best for you. Believe me, if you look at the blade chart suggestions from the manufacturers, you'll soon have 1,000 blades but I guarantee you'll settle down to 4 or 5 that you really like the best. So while that is all soaking in like cheap stain on balsa, watch this. Now, many people are going to ask, what's the best place to buy these scroll saw blades? So my tip for you is, I'm not going to tell you. Because you remember, here at the Stumpy Nubs workshop, we don't endorse any particular manufacturer. Check it out. On the internet, there are a number of companies, good companies, that sell scroll saw blades. A lot of them have charts that kind of can give you some idea on what they will cut. Buy a few of each. Don't get caught up in all the blade lubes and all these other things that perhaps will make miracle cuts. And when you get them home, separate them and classify them. Because once they hit the floor, and it's happened to me, you will be looking through a magnifying glass. And that's another little tip. Buy yourself a nice magnifying glass. So if blades do get out of order, and if your eyes are like mine, you're not going to be able to see on a number 2 the teeth to tell whether it's a skip tooth, double tooth, reverse tooth, or whatever. But a nice magnifying glass will help you to be able to scan that blade. So again, have some fun, and that's our tip of the week. Hey Chipsters, welcome to the new segment of our show. It's called Flashback. Now let me tell you how it got started. Recently I was at a Led Zeppelin revival concert, and while my mind was fully expanded and I was in the concession line for my 4th Zeppelin Monster Pink Lemonade drink, and you know how much high fructose corn syrup are in those things, it hit me. On this week's show, we're going to be talking about scroll saw blades. And there are like a bazillion different blades. So where would one store all these blades? And there it was. Like my grandkids would say, not. Well, gang, our time is well spent. And considering all of this blade stuff, it's made my old bean hurt. So let's look forward to the next episode when we'll consider scroll saw blade selection for the wooden project at hand. We'll talk about blade tension, feed rate, and blade speed, and flex, which are very important, and blade life, and a whole lot more. Along with another around the corner tip of the week. And if my serotonin level is way up, maybe another flashback as well. So remember, no matter what anybody else says, you can always trust Mike, because you know, I would never pull your stash.